Are we good? We are good.
We're good.
Hello, Boston.
Hello, St. Joe's.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Can you hear us okay in the back?
Oh, we're thrilled to be in Boston. Hold on. Is that on? Okay.
You
We are thrilled to be in Boston.
Kiss it.
What a great city. We just went to the public market here, which is amazing. The harbor here is amazing. We ate at Neptune for lunch. Has anybody ever been there? Wow.
Yes, glorious.
That is
oysters.
an oyster bar. We've been in 13 cities, 14 cities in the last 2 weeks. We just released Booze and Vinyl. We've been on a tear. So the first 2 weeks of the book is like its moment to shine and tell everybody whether it's doing well or not. So we went in a mobile turntable van from New York City to Nashville. And it's great to be back on the East Coast. The weather is beautiful here, crisp. Couldn't enjoy it more.
Yeah, the flowers just coming out. Thank you for bringing us in on a beautiful day. Want to start off with just a little toast. We've got some drinks coming around, but raise your glasses, please, to St. Joe's, to President Reed, to everyone who's brought us in tonight. And if you don't know the person next to you or across the table from you, cheers them and introduce yourself. Fantastic.
We have presented about classic movies a few times. We've never had anyone tickling the ivories downstairs before.
I know, it's
so we are really setting the mood here for some
delighted.
cocktails. In fact, we're going to see a little bit of Casablanca, and that music's just going to fit right in.
Now, if you hear me talking to someone named Ben, it's not the pianist. I'm not making a request. I'm talking to our IT gentleman in the back, letting him know to pull up the first slide for tonight's presentation so that you'll be able to follow along. This is a night of sips and clips, friends. Sips, we're going to be serving you 3 different drinks over the course of tonight. And we're going to be playing some clips from some of our favorite films, mostly in chronological order, to tell you the story of cocktails and Hollywood films and how they're intertwined. First, though, my brother is going to we're going to do some introductions. We're going to tell you how the heck we've come to this point in our lives.
First, I want to say this might be the first cocktail PowerPoint and probably the last cocktail PowerPoint you'll ever see. But we didn't know how quite to cue the clips otherwise, so just bear with us. We have some notes. There's no quiz at the end, although we are going to do a prize giveaway
So
for people paying attention. So we're the Darlingtons. We, in 2016, we came out with a book called The New Cocktail Hour, which is about 270 of all of the classic cocktails that you want to know. It was written with the home bartender in mind, and it runs in chronological order. It kind of has all the bells and whistles. It's got tasting notes and all this. After that book, we wrote that book 900 miles apart on Google Hang, and we both ended up with wet bars. And
500 cocktails later, one mega Google Doc.
We were approached by Turner Classic Movies to write their entertainment guide, and we did movie night menus. And what we learned doing the first book was that there's this great connection between American cinema and the American cocktail. The American cocktail was created here. The cocktail was created in the United States during the Revolutionary War. And there's this great synergy from cocktails being named after famous actresses and actors like Douglas Fairbanks, a movie called Mary Pickford. There's a movie called Blood and Sand that starred Rudy Valentino. I don't know if anybody's had a Blood and Sand. It's a classic, amazing cocktail if you go to a cocktail bar here in town, which you have amazing cocktail bars here in town. I was just at the Eastern Standard last night. That's Jackson Cannon's bar. Does everybody love Eastern Standard? And the Hawthorne Drink is here, which is one of the great bars in the United States. So we've been having a good time.
Absolutely.
So Movie Night Menus is the story we're going to tell tonight.
We're going to quickly back up and just tell you a little bit about how we got into this racket. Because as siblings, we never imagined we would be before you on a night like tonight talking about a trilogy of cocktail books. If you're wondering about our majors from college, so relevant, Andre?
I have a classic bartending degree, which is philosophy.
I was an English major. So, for people who wonder, what do folks do with a philosophy degree and an English major?
You run restaurants.
Yeah, you write cocktail books. So we grew up in the Midwest. There are just 2 of us, brother and sister. I'm older, shorter,
I'm
but
grayer
older.
and live harder.
And we grew up in a household where we cooked together as a family every night. Our parents were very into the arts. We watched a lot of foreign films. And the turntable was the center of the house because our dad's a musician. So we listened to music every evening with dinner. So we have come to these books, which might seem very random, through childhood. Those of you who are planning to have kids in the audience, invite your kids into the kitchen, show them great films, give them music, and you never know what they might do in their careers. After we went to college in the Midwest, we both landed in Madison, Wisconsin, where we became food and drinks writers. We had other jobs by day, but we got started in the world of food and drinks. And it was this passion that had been instilled in us by our parents who loved to cook. I worked at a newspaper for 5 years running the food section. And when I left, my brother took over as the cocktail columnist.
And then wine.
And then wine.
And then reviewing.
And then spirits.
It was never ending.
So I moved to Philadelphia to teach at St. Joe's in 2005. I switched careers. And when I arrived, I didn't know a single person, and I really missed the food community, and I missed writing about food. So I wandered into the great specialty food store in Philadelphia, DeBruno Brothers. Maybe some of you have been there, 5 locations. And of course I went to the cheese counter because Wisconsin, hello, dairy state, I love the cheese. My students know this. They never graduate as English majors without eating a really good brie. I started a funny little cheese blog that President Reed referenced, Madame Fromage, purely pedagogical. I wanted to know, like, should I be teaching blogging in my class? I thought I was going to do it for 6 months. I'm now 9 years into it. And I ended up doing, my first cookbook was with DeBruno Brothers, their cheese guide. It was a tremendous experience to both teach during the day, but then be like sneaking off to the cheese store at night, nibbling away, and writing labels and blog posts and stuff like that for the company. Once that book came out in 2013, and my students did eat a lot of test cheese, I called Andre, who was back in the Midwest, and I said, that book nearly killed me. I'm working full time. I'm eating so much cheese. You have to help me. I said, let's do a cheese and wine book together. So we spent 6 months working on a cheese and wine book proposal, which got shut down.
Reject slip. But
Right.
the publisher said, we love that you're siblings. We love your voice. Would you like to do a cocktail book? I was like, okay. I'd already done a cocktail column. I'd actually moved on to wine. But I had done a lot of cocktail work in the past, and I ended up owning a bar and restaurant in Madison. So we agreed to do it, and we spent 2 years doing that book.
I said, no way am I writing this book. Andre said, you say yes, I am quitting my job. We are doing this. And that is why we are here today. So I have my brother to thank. Be kind to your siblings. You
I
never
don't know if that's a
know whether you will end up in business together. Okay, we are ready for our first slide because we are going to tell you now what it is that we are going to give to you. Here is tonight's presentation. Listen up, because this is going to increase your
Cachet.
Your cachet.
At cocktail parties.
Improve your love life. Oh, yes. And
Make you 1 inch taller.
and make every night better. Okay, we are going to tell you the story of the cocktail, how it developed in chronological order, because as we told you, we drank 500 drinks in historical order, from the old-fashioned up to modern classics, and we are still sanding, 1 sip at a time and a lot down the
We
drain.
had a lot of friends helping.
Yes. We're going to give you some take-home techniques tonight. Before you leave, you will all know the difference between shaking and stirring. You can see we've brought our tools. We can go over them with you at the end if you're curious about setting up your own wet bar. We are all about becoming great home bartenders using quality products. Lastly, we're going to talk to you most about movie night menus, our second book. And we want to show you what we found really fascinating about how cocktails and Hollywood are intimately intertwined. So again, it's sips and clips. Get ready.
I think we can go to our next slide.
Our next slide depicts this beautiful cocktail. How many of you have had a French 75 before? Yes, there are people in the crowd. Okay, now you've all had a French 75. Andre, what's
So
the scoop?
we've become Turner Classic Movies home entertainment experts in a way, and we love the French 75 because it's always great to put bubbles in somebody's hand when they come over, right? If you've gone to somebody's house and they pop a bottle of Prosecco or whatever it is, it's always a great way to start. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I'm telling you to hold the mic a little closer.
Oh, okay.
Is that right? Do you need, because sometimes he's going out
Okay,
a little
sorry.
bit. Okay, so hold the mic just a little closer. So the French 75, it is made of 3 simple ingredients, essentially. It's gin, fresh lemon juice, champagne, and a tiny bit of simple syrup, but we don't count that. And the reason that the French 75 is the first drink we're serving you tonight is because we think it's just kind of ultimately the Hollywood cocktail. It appears in Casablanca. How many of you have seen Casablanca? Oh, lots of hands are going up. That's fantastic. You're essentially in a bar with tickling ivories. This is like we are recreating Casablanca in here tonight with Humphrey Bogart and Ingmar Bergman.
So the French 75 is also, it harkens back to cocktails were classically, they were named after events or movies. The French 75 was a French artillery gun that helped win the war. And so that is one of the reasons why it is in Casablanca in the first place, but also it's just one of the great classic drinks that was basically created abroad in Paris and then came back to the United States.
We think it's appropriate for Boston, too, because this is a terrific cocktail to have with seafood.
Oh, it's great.
Wonderful with oysters. Great with calamari. Throwing some fish on the grill this summer. French 75. Really, any time is ripe for a French 75. It's such a popular cocktail in the craft cocktail world. There's even a hashtag, French 75 Graham.
And all with that, I think we're ready for the first clip.
Give us a little Casablanca. One of the great all-time scenes from Casablanca references cocktails. It's a famous quote. You'll recognize it surely. Here we go.
Boss. Yeah. Boss, ain't you going to bed?
Not right now.
Ain't you planning on going to bed in the near future?
No.
You ever go?
Boss? No.
I ain't sleeping.
Boss?
No, not
yeah.
Don't have a drink.
Boss, ain't you going to bed?
Get out of here.
Not right now.
Ain't you planning on going to bed in the near future?
No.
You ever going to bed?
No.
No, she's coming back. Well, I ain't sleeping.
Card, drive all night. Good, I'll have a drink.
No, not me, boss.
I'll have a drink. She's get up and go home, will you?
No, sir. I'm staying right here.
Grab Bugatti, then she walks in. Well, that's the way it goes. One in, one out. Sam.
Yes, boss.
It's December 1941 in Casablanca. What time is it in New York?
What? My watch stopped.
I bet they're asleep in New York. I bet they're asleep all over America. All the gin joints in all the towns in all the world. She walks into mine. What's that you're playing?
Oh, just a little something on my own.
Oh, stop it. You know what I want to hear.
No, don't.
You played it for her, you play it for me.
Well, I don't think I can remember.
If she can stand it, I can. Play it.
Yes, boss.
I guess there was a bus in that scene we didn't know about.
Or an air raid, more appropriately.
Anyway, one of the great cocktail scenes of all time. We wanted to start you out with a French 75. It's a little out of chronological order, obviously, but it's a great way to start the evening. And now we're up for our first pop quiz and prize
we have a
giveaway.
fabulous prize. Who knows, when do you shake a drink and when do you stir? Raise your hand if you know. You think you stir. She thinks she's going to stir a sparkling champagne drink or a sparkling drink. You don't want to shake it because, yeah, you don't want to destroy the bubbles. All right,
Does anybody have any guesses?
Good guess.
Pretend we're not on live TV. Just throw out a guess.
When do you shake? When do you stir?
Oh, we got a couple.
Yes, Vanessa. Vanessa, wonderful English major in the house. Hey. So Vanessa says, if there's ice, you shake it. I'm holding up a Boston shaker, friends. It's a two-part shaker. And she says, if there's no ice, you stir it. Let me show you what their mixing glass and stirring situation looks like at home. All right, these are the two basic
Does anybody else have a
cocktail
guess?
tools. Anybody
I
else?
saw another hand back there. Okay. All right. So imagine you're trying to I'll start giving hints. Imagine you're trying to emulsify something. Okay.
Well,
this is good. This is what we find. This is what we find that people don't know.
All
We'll
right,
give
well-
we'll give another chance to win. You shake and you stir. Do you want
Okay,
to tell them?
yes.
Actually, we can move to the next slide.
Okay, I'm going to give you a little lesson. This is funny because I'm always teaching classes, but I've never talked to a St. Joe's crowd about when to shake and when to stir a cocktail. It makes me extremely proud. All right, friends, this is going to improve everyone's life in here. Get ready. You're going to shake a drink in the shaker. If you have a drink with cream, citrus, or eggs, because you've got to it's like a blender. You've got to like beat those ingredients into the spirits, otherwise they separate. You stir when it's a spirituous drink, when it's a spirits only drink. You can remember this because the word stir has the same letters as the word spirits.
Is she a
okay?
teacher or what?
Yeah, I know. I'm so teacherly. So here are my examples, class. If you're making a martini, stir. A Manhattan, stir. A Negroni. Who likes a Negroni in here? Oh, I love this
Yeah.
crowd. Okay, Negroni drinkers, you are going home and you are stirring. You shake if you have, say, a daiquiri, a French 75, which you just had.
So French 75 is a little confusing. You
Yes.
shake the first ingredients and then add the champagne. Don't shake the champagne. But-
Same with a margarita because citrus. Okay, we're going to come back to that, so please try to remember this is very important because when we have a martini, we're going to talk about the whole shaken and stirred rule, which has
comes
become
up again.
confusing. All
I think we're
right.
ready for the next slide.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. Where does this cocktail come from that we all take for granted in the United States, but is really a weird invention? It came from the United States around the time of the American Revolution. Before the American Revolution, everyone drank their spirits the same way, and that was basically at a rowdy frat party. And only the wealthy drank spirits. The poor drank cider and beer. And the wealthy drank spirits, and they drank it together out of communal punch bowls. And spirits were so expensive that they only drank it for commemorating battles when somebody was born, launching a new endeavor, or very rare and expensive moments to commemorate. The cocktail appears at during the American Revolution, and the idea that you could walk into a bar and, as an individual, order a bespoke drink made for you, made to order, was really wild. But it makes sense, right? So we get rid of the British, we get rid of the lords that were here, and everybody wanted to drink like them because it was the revolution. That's why we revolted in the first place, to be fancy, right? Fancy drunk like them. And the idea that you could walk into a bar and order a bespoke drink is really unique. Nobody drank like that. The Europeans didn't drink like that. There's all these records of the Europeans coming to the United States and writing home, being like, they are really strange. They take whiskey and they take cognac and they like add lemon juice to it. You have to see it. And it kind of became the rage across the globe that America had freed itself, the colonies had freed themselves, and everyone was drinking in these wild new ways. And we were incorporating all kinds of stuff that we had over in the Americas indigenously. And the cocktail as a word, we can advance to the next slide. Oh, yeah. All right, I've got to hold this mic closer. So
This is a fabulous story, by the way.
This is a fabulous
Especially
story.
if you were an English major.
Yes.
History of language.
You have to choose your company wisely when retelling this story. But it's
That's
a
so
true
true.
story, and it's in the name of science. So we'll tell it. The cocktail was created around the American Revolution. It took about 20 years for the word cocktail to show up in print. Originally, a cocktail was only a mix of spirits, ice, sugar, and bitters. So those of you who love old fashions, you'll recognize that that is the recipe for an old fashioned. The old fashioned was the first cocktail in existence. It was called the old fashioned because the old duffers, by the time that cocktails were being written about, were the guys and gals that came in and ordered that drink. So it was the old fashioned already at that time. That word became metastasized. It metastasized to mean all mixed drinks. So martini is now a cocktail, but it's not really because it doesn't have bitters, right? So for a long time, this stumped everyone. Why is this thing called the cocktail? We knew it came from gaming culture, and it turns out that there are cocktail historians now. That's a thing, and the cocktail historians have gone back and discovered that after the American Revolution, the wealthiest colony was Virginia, which had a no-good group of sporting fraternities that they liked to bet on horses and trade horses. And they drank these wild things called cocktails in the morning for breakfast, if you can imagine. After the Revolution, Americans drank a lot. We drank 4 to 6 cocktails a day, and we started at breakfast. It was a great way to get caloric intake. In water, you have to remember, water was unclean, was unsafe, right? So people were drinking beer, cider, and spirits for caloric intake and for health, basically.
For health, yes.
The same reason we do it today. So to cock the tail of a horse was, in these horse trading and betting community, was to take a huge nub of ginger and to shove it up a horse's rear and to slap the horse and send it out onto the auction floor where it appeared more sprightly and therefore was more valuable. So that is the origin of the cocktail. True story. Don't Google it now, but it's true. You can Google it afterwards. That's where the word cocktail comes from. How many are going to retell that, or just let that one slide? Next slide, please.
So moving into the golden age of cocktails. And what I want you to imagine, friends, is a time before television, before movies, when going out for the night meant going to a fancy hotel bar where there might be shaker boys, like this illustration here, passing lit cocktails back and forth. And just like tonight, there would be someone on the piano, and you would enjoy cocktail as a form of entertainment.
So the cocktail golden age really kicks off right after the American Civil War. After the Civil War, the United States was very wealthy and went into this huge boom. And that's when a lot of the technological innovations that came together that the United States was leading, such as we were the first people to have carbonated water, really important for cocktails. We were also the first people to figure out how to get ice from places that had ice to cities that didn't have ice, and save that ice through the whole year so that you could get fancy drunk in the summertime. And so it all kind of came together after the Civil War. It's known as the golden era of cocktails. And this is the era that we still all harken back to. So if you go into a speakeasy-style bar or a fancy cocktail bar still in the United States, chances are there's a reason why that bartender has a mustache and maybe has suspenders, and that's because we're talking about the late 19th century, which is really the golden era. Right after the golden era, we get the beginning of cinema, which really appears in the teens. And it's amazing how quickly cocktails showed up in the first even silent films. People are drinking in those movies from day one, which leads us to our next clip.
So before working on this project, I don't know that Andre and I had ever sat down and watched a silent movie. How many of you have watched a silent movie? Oh, okay, wonderful, excellent. Well, our first clip for you tonight is of Charlie Chaplin, and we were delighted to discover that an early Chaplin film features a cocktail. And really, this is a theme throughout our presentation. Since the beginning of cinema, there have been cocktails in entertaining. So they're intimately intertwined, even here, and it's conveyed beautifully, even in silence. So let's go ahead and watch the clip. Anybody seen the Idol class before? All right, fabulous.
Home and say you've seen the first most famous cocktail. That is probably the first most famous cocktail scene on cinema. It shows Charlie Chaplin's true genius. Let's move forward a little bit of time. Of course, right after cinema and cocktails really started to have a love affair, we had this big damper called Prohibition. Cue the sad music. And Prohibition, obviously, it didn't really kill the American cocktail. The American cocktail went abroad and went underground. We know that it created a lot of social upheaval and did a lot of wild things. One of the really fascinating things was that there was a parallel movement in cinema, which was the Hays Code, which really got enforced in the 1930s. It took a little while, so the Hays Code was actually enforced kind of as Prohibition was ending, but the Hays Code put a clamp down on all moral misbehavior in cinema.
So if you've watched a film, an early film, and you've wondered why the husband and wife sleep in separate single beds, it's because we didn't want to have any lustful kissing on screen or infer anything about marital closeness. So we found this was a really interesting parallel, Andre and I, as we were working on this book. Wow, right at the time when booze was outlawed, also any sort of online nudity or lascivious behavior was banned.
But right after Prohibition, America's appetite for cocktails was wild. That's when all of the great cocktail books that we still read today and that the bartenders use today, most of them were written. And we had one of the greatest, if not the greatest, cocktail movie of all time, which if we want to cue up at least the next slide.
Right, so notice 1930s, Prohibition, the Hays Code, and here we have The Thin Man in 1934. Anybody ever seen The Thin Man or heard of The Thin Man? Okay, a few people. Real quick, The Thin Man is a story of a husband and wife detective couple named Nick and Nora Charles.
There's cocktail glasses named after them.
Yes,
if you've ever
Nick
seen
and
a Nick
Nora
and Nora
glasses, which are
that's
beautiful.
How famous they were.
Yeah, they look kind of like a cross between a martini glass and a champagne flute. This film changed cinema because MGM expected this to just be like a quick and dirty
flop,
film.
really.
A flop, really, absolutely. It was nominated for an Oscar. They went on to make, I think, 3 Nick and Nora films. It became a radio program. It became a television series. And it's because America loved watching the glamorous Charleses solve mysteries and drink cocktail after cocktail after cocktail.
Which was apparently the recipe for marital bliss, because they're known as being one of the happiest couples in cinema. There must be a connection there. A couple other fun factoids was that this is a little montage of them over the years in all their movies. But the opening scene is one of the most famous cocktail scenes in cinema, and it was all ad-libbed. In fact, there was no budget for any of these movies, and William Powell and Myrna Loy pretty much ad-libbed and joked their way through, and this was really kind of set the tone in Hollywood, that after this, they really searched for these couples. You can think of all the couples up to the present that form these great pairings in cinema history. So this kind of changed cinema to cement this idea that you could get an actor and actress together, and they would just make magic on screen without even a great script.
Ben, give us the Charles.
The important thing is the rhythm. You always have rhythm in your shaking. Now, in Manhattan, you shake to foxtrot. A Bronx to two-step time. The dry martini, you always shake to waltz time.
So it's you he was after.
Hello, sugar.
He's dragged me into every gin mill on the block.
Yeah, I had him out this morning.
Ah, I thought so. Say, how many drinks have you had?
This will make 6 martinis.
All right. Will you bring me 5 more martinis? Leo, line them right up here.
Yes, ma'am.
I certainly think your husband's great.
Well, I'm glad somebody does.
Is he working on a case?
Yes.
What
yes.
case?
A case of scotch. Pitch in and help him. Is that my drink over there?
What are you drinking?
Right.
Yes, that's yours.
Want a drink?
What do you think?
Darling, you've got to pack.
Yeah, that's right. Pack. I must pack.
Are you packing, dear?
Hmm? Yes, darling, I'm just putting away this liquor. Family dinner, I suppose.
Huh?
Aunt Catherine John, Uncle Willie, Cousin Emily.
Aunt Hattie, Cousin Lucius, Uncle Thomas. Pour me one, too. Thanks.
Everything's on the house.
Yeah? That right? Well, that's different. Why didn't you say so? Drinks and everything?
Sure.
Champagne, boys. Me too.
Sure, champagne. Willie?
Scotch. With a champagne chaser.
Likewise.
I don't care whose wife she is. I don't like a dame that gets noisy after she's had a few snifters.
Hi-ho. Seems like man's work's never done.
Ma'am, did he hear that? Or did he smell it? That's Mr. Charles, isn't it?
Yes'm.
This is a cocktail, isn't it?
Yes'm.
They'll get together. He'll be with you in 2 shakes of a cocktail.
Cocktail? Cocktail? I think I'll try one of those things. Estrelita! Estrelita!
Yes, sir, it is.
How do you know? Must be telepathy. It's still my favorite.
Mr. Charles! It is. That telescope is working regular now.
And not a moment too soon.
Daddy, drink.
Oh. Thanks, pal. Mommy, he's a great kid. I'm much obliged.
Oh, it was nothing. Anytime.
Molly, to Phi Beta Kappa convention. Well, very nice timing, Mommy.
Asta. Asta's gone.
Oh, he's probably gone to the bar. Excuse me.
We do.
Let's talk a little bit, and then we'll talk about the drink.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to imagine, since in that movie they drink in literally every scene, it's hard to imagine that America started to drink more. But it did, and that was after World War II. When we started to end, this is the Mad Men, the beginning of the Mad Men era, where we have many of the classic simpler bar drinks that we have today. During the war, alcohol was used for the war effort, so that's when Americans got their first taste of tequila, because it was coming up from the south of the border, and also we got a taste for rum. So those really started to come into the American market. Tiki, because of the Polynesian craze, started right after World War II. And we have a great clip. We can actually move on to the next slide. If anyone has ever seen Guys and Dolls, or if you haven't, it is just one of the great musicals. You should watch it just for the simple fact that Marlon Brando attempts to sing. And it apparently took multiple takes, and Brando and Sinatra actually hated each other off screen, which was pretty funny. There's amazing stories about the two of them trying to work together. This is a great scene. Guy Masterson places a bet that he can woo basically this general of the Salvation Army and get her to go to lunch with him in Cuba, which is kind of a tall order even these days. And this is a scene of Americans heavy drinking. This is a great, basically, Marlon Brando starts a bar fight.
So we're going to let you enjoy a few sips. You're drinking a Vesper, and we're going to tell you about that in a minute, but go ahead and enjoy it. This is one of the longer clips. You're going to see some singing, some dancing, and then literally a cat fight.
Yo sé que es la luz del amor cuando alumbra cual sol tu mirón. ¿Por qué ignorar este amor sin igual? Porque este amor ahí en tu mirar sienta la luz del amor. Para mí, mirar y brillará.
witnessed the transformative effect of a cocktail. Real quick, just want to point out that the drink in that film or in that scene is a rum drink out of a coconut. And one of the things that we did in our book was to recreate the drinks you're actually seeing in the scene so that when you enjoy the movie at home, you can make a meal that sort of fits with the film, but also drink the drink you're also seeing.
In that film, that was the first time she had ever had alcohol, so you can kind of forgive her, right?
She didn't know what Bacardi
Yeah,
was.
she asked him, "What is in this?" He's like, "I don't know. I think there's Bacardi in it."
So this is what you have in your hand, a Vesper. Has anyone had a Vesper before? It's a very Jesuitical kind of drink. I'm definitely assigning this to you for your next family event.
So we just want to flash this on the screen real quick. This was made famous. We're going to show James Bond in a minute. This is James Bond's drink.
Quick quiz, would it be shaken or stirred?
Should be stirred. Should be stirred. We'll talk about that. He does order it shaken. This is a fun drink because for the last 100 years, well, basically since Ian Fleming wrote James Bond, you could not get a proper Vesper in the United States because Quina Lillet had actually died and was no longer imported. But a company called Coca Americano recreated basically the Quina Lillet flavor, so you can have a true Vesper again, which was a big deal and just a sign of how far things have come and how fun things are.
One other little assignment is to go to a great bar in Boston and ask for a Vesper. The bartender will know you are a serious drinker.
Or you just binge watch James Bond.
Yes.
If we can go to the next clip, or the next slide, please. So what Prohibition couldn't do in the United States, which was kill the cocktail, the 1960s counterculture did. The 1960s is when the cocktail culture that had come from the American Revolution and up through the Civil War and survived Prohibition, it's when it finally died. So we can have a moment of sad trombone for the American cocktail in this era. And what happened was the new era of the counterculture in the 1960s, that alcohol that their parents drank and the hard drinking years was associated with your dad and mom's drink, and the counterculture smoked marijuana. So marijuana was the cool thing that kicked out the cocktail, and the cocktail kind of died. We have an amazing clip, one of the best cocktail scenes that really shows the difference between the generational divide in the 1960s, and it's the year that cocktail historians place as sort of the beginning of what's known as the dark ages of the American cocktail. So we want to cue the next slide.
Hopefully you recognize this. This is The Graduate. How many of you seen The Graduate? Perfect, almost the whole crowd. All right, another great film to go back to and rewatch this summer from 1967. Get ready, Dustin Hoffman and Anne Bancroft in a classic seduction scene. Let's have the...
May I ask you a question? What do you think of me?
What do you mean?
You've known me nearly all your life. You must have formed some opinion of me.
Well, I always thought that you were a very nice person.
Did you know I was an alcoholic?
What?
Did you know that?
Look, I think I should be going.
Sit down, Benjamin.
Mrs. Robinson, if you don't mind my saying so, this conversation is getting a little strange. Now, I'm sure that Mr. Robinson will be here any minute now.
No.
What?
My husband will be back quite late. He should be gone for several hours.
Oh, my God.
Pardon?
Oh, no, Mrs. Robinson, oh, no.
What's wrong?
Mrs. Robinson, you didn't expect...
What?
I mean, you didn't really think I'd do something like that.
Like what?
What do you think?
Well, I don't know.
For God's sake, Mrs. Robinson. Here we are. You got me into your house. You give me a drink. You put on music. Now you start opening up your personal life to me and tell me your husband won't be home for hours.
So?
Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me. Aren't you?
All right, our next slide, please.
So this 1967 is the year that they put in the cocktail dark ages. It's when we had the rise of one single spirit, which is vodka, which is still the dominant spirit, even after the cocktail revolution that we've had for the last basically over a decade. Vodka, if you ask any bar owner, vodka is what keeps the lights on in the bar. And vodka is always that top cocktail on the bar menu usually, and it outsells the rest 8-1. Vodka, it was a number of reasons that vodka stormed through the American palate the way that it did. One was the most genius brand placement in movie history, and that is Smirnoff in the James Bond movies. The story goes that the Smirnoff rep in Los Angeles got in with the James Bond, the producers of James Bond, and made sure that Smirnoff was in there, changed Ian Fleming's original drink to a vodka martini dry, shaken, not stirred. And this led to an era of, we'll talk a little bit more of this in a minute, an era that some of us grew up in, which was canned juices, fast ice, low quality ingredients, giant portions, drinking to get drunk. Nobody does that here, right? We drink cocktails. So if we want to cue the next clip, we're going to show a montage of just what really put the nail in the coffin for cocktails in the U.S.
Bond, 1962.
One medium dry vodka martini, mixed like you said, sir, and not stirred.
Thank you.
Anything else, sir?
No, that's all.
Dry martini, lemon peel, shaken, not stirred.
Vodka?
Of course.
Can I do something for you, Mr. Bond?
Just a drink. A martini, shaken, not stirred.
Shall I have the vodka martini sent up?
Shaken, not stirred.
Of course.
The lady'll have a Bacardi on the rocks.
For the gentleman, vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Mr. Zukovsky will be delighted to see you.
Vodka martini. Plenty of ice, if you can spare it.
Dry martini.
Oui, monsieur.
Wait. 3 measures of Gordon's, 1 of vodka, half a measure of quina lily. Shake it over ice, and then add a thin slice of lemon peel. Vodka martini. Shaken or stirred? Do I look like I give a damn?
Which was a huge moment for everybody. We can go ahead and actually start working on our next cocktail.
And while Abbott, who's one of our fabulous bartenders tonight, does that, we're going to explain why you actually want to stir your martini. First of all, Andre, why is it that Bond asks for it shaken?
So it's kind of funny. Ian Fleming wanted to make James Bond a very strange character to the British audience that he was writing to at the time. And so he made James Bond very modern and very non-British, so he drank vodka, and he thought it would be funny if he had it opposite how everyone is supposed to drink it. So it just made James Bond very unique. It was a signature order at the bar. And it's a great tie between, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but the tie between characters in movies and what they order at the bar. We all have our signature drink. Many of us have our signature drink that we order at the bar. I'm sure you do too.
One fun thing to try at home is to both shake a martini and then stir a martini. You're going to find that they're very different drinks. They look different, first of all, because a shaken martini is cloudy and has ice shivs in it. And a stirred martini, friends, is crystal clear, well diluted, and without any ice shivs bumping against your teeth. Now, of course, you might prefer a shaken martini. We're not going to hold it against you, but we're just going to tell you that if you get truly into craft cocktails and you want to make beautiful cocktails for your friends, it's also easier to just stir a series of drinks. Quick little tip: place the ice in this mixing jar. You can also use a mason jar or a pint glass, like your SJU pint glass. I've done it many a time after work.
You also don't need a fancy bar spoon. You can use a chopstick.
Yes. Put in your ice first. You add your spirits, your vermouth, and then your gin or your vodka. I prefer gin. And then you stir for about 30 seconds. Why do you do this? Because part of what makes a really good martini or a good Manhattan is water. Ice melts. You want a 20% dilution ratio, math nerds. 20% dilution ratio makes it a perfect spirituous drink. If you drink a martini that's not well stirred, it's going to taste a little hot, a little tight, maybe it just feels like a little aggressive on the palate. You know your martini is perfect, but it tastes like an ocean. Am I right? I'm looking at her going like, she's going, yes. So again, 20% ice melt. A good way to tell this, if you lose count during 30 seconds, is to keep your fingers around the glass. When it is so cold you can no longer hold it, it means your drink is perfectly chilled. That's when you take your strainer here, strain the ice out, and into your chilled glass. Of course it's a chilled glass, because after tonight you're always going to keep martini glasses in your freezer. All right, let's bring it up to the present moment, Andre.
So how did we get to the point where we're in this room drinking craft cocktails at a bar in downtown Boston that is making incredible craft 1862. And it is, if you look at this book from 1862, it has probably 80% of the cocktails that you've heard of. That's how much we still drink those drinks. And Jerry Thomas had been taught by a gentleman who had been taught by a gentleman from the Revolutionary War. So these drinks are very old, and they got into the hands of Dale DeGroff, who decided to throw out his margarita mix, throw out everything, bring fresh limes. It's hard to imagine that this wasn't the case, but he started to fresh squeeze lemon and lime juice, imagine that, in his cocktails, and get rid of those mixes, and really started this craft cocktail revolution. This is mid-late 90s. From there, Milk and Honey opened in New York in the early 2000s. Violet Hour opened in Chicago in like 2006. Like the Varnish opened in Los Angeles in 2008. So really through that decade, from probably 1998, 1997 through 2008, 2012 to now, where it's just absolutely exploded, you started to get these little islands of incredible cocktail bars spreading out through the United States. And it really goes back to Dale. Let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about, since we've been talking about, we've all heard this word craft, right? What does craft cocktail really mean? It's the word's been watered down a little bit, but it means some pretty simple stuff.
Yes, so this is my instructional lecture that is going to make your life better. What makes a great craft cocktail? First of all, if you go to the store and you buy beautiful spirits, you want to make sure that you always use quality ingredients and quality ice. So if you're spending $30 on a bottle of gin, for example, you don't want to be using the ice that's been in your freezer for the last 6 weeks next to the bag of shrimp. Because it's going to taste like a stale bag of shrimp. And you certainly don't want to add sour mix or the thing that comes out of a little plastic lemon bottle. So if you're using quality ingredients, which of course you are, middle shelf or top shelf, not bottom shelf, you want to use fresh ice, what we call slow ice. Andre's going to talk a little bit more about ice and why ice is so crucial in a minute. Fresh squeezing your own citrus. Get a citrus press. We have 3 of them. Squeeze your fresh citrus right before the party or just a few hours before so that you have maximum freshness. Proper technique, we talk about it in all of our books. It takes 10 minutes to learn how to shake or how to stir. Having the appropriate glassware, and of course putting them in the freezer or warming them first if you're doing a hot drink. And then, of course, that word we love, culinary attention to garnish. Beautiful garnishes you've seen on tonight's drinks, like the lemon peels and the quality cherry, speak to changes in the way we think of cocktails. We want something fresh on the side of the glass.
And this isn't fussy. All it means is think about how you're going to garnish the drink before it ends. You know, it's like you make a great Manhattan for yourself or a great martini for yourself, and then you think, oh, where are the olives, actually? So you just want to do a little mise en place, you know, in chef world they call it, to make sure that your garnish is there in advance. It really does make the difference. It's how you get a home cocktail to taste like that cocktail you get out at a bar.
Quickly, I'm going to ask Andre to talk about ice, because if you've gone out for a great drink, you've probably noticed sometimes you get like this beautiful big cube of ice, or you might even see a bartender chipping ice in the back. What's going on there, Andre, and how do you make good ice at home?
We can nerd out about ice. Does everybody have a Manhattan right now? Does everybody have it? Yes! Let me talk about ice in terms of the Manhattan. If we can go to the next cocktail slide. So the Manhattan became the poster child of the craft cocktail movement, which is now what it's become known as. Why? One is it's a really historical drink. It's the drink that the martini comes from. The Manhattan is one of the 7 borough drinks of New York. There's a Bronx, there's a Brooklyn, there's a number of other. So each borough has its own cocktail, and the Manhattan just happens to be the most famous of the New York drinks. The Manhattan became the poster child because one was the bar started to use rye. Rye was the typical whiskey of the Northeast at the time that the Manhattan was created in the 19th century. 2, it used sweet vermouth, and good vermouth started to come back into the market right when the craft cocktail movement did. And vermouth does go bad. It oxidizes just like wine. A couple weeks on vermouth, especially outside of the refrigerator, it's gone bad. So
keep it in your fridge.
Keep it in your fridge. Buy it in the smallest bottle you can. Share it with your friends. Bitters started to come back into the market. They were good bitters. Angostura has always been amazing, but other bitters started to come back in the market that were historic. And one of the big things was if you order a drink these days, you get a really amazing sticky Amarena cherry, right? Stuck on the end of a pick. Well, it used to be you got that bright red, nuclear red cherry on the end of it that was sweet and kind of tasty, but kind of gross. So the Manhattan became the poster child for the craft cocktail movement. I can talk about ice if we want to nerd about. Bartenders get very nerdy about ice, but the simple answer is that during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, bar owners realized that ice needed to just do 2 things. It needed to be made very quickly, and it needed to take up a lot of volume, and that was to make them money. So when craft came back and people decided to go back to these 19th century drinks, it seems like a fetishized thing, and maybe you guys have been to bars where a guy's chipping a block of ice or cutting a block of ice, and it seems very, very nerdy. But what they're trying to do is control that dilution ratio of cooling down that drink and not making it watery for you, and have ice that's slow and dilute slowly to make that a really quality experience for you. The good news is that your home freezer makes slow ice, right? It was just these balloon, we all know those balloon barrels, right? That like kind of breaking your tongue and break the moment you pour anything on top of them. That's what bars were using for a number of years. If you shake those, they just turn right into water. So the reason there is this attention to ice, and all of the great cocktail bars have some sort of ice program that's doing better ice than was happening back in even the 90s.
So we've got our second to last clip here, I believe, and this is Marilyn Monroe making a Manhattan in a hot water bottle. Don't know if anybody has ever tried that when they were in college, but it does work. She's on a train. You'll see this very amusing clip. In our book, we played around with doing a steak dinner with Manhattan, because steaks and Manhattans are wonderful together. And we decided to marinate a steak in a Manhattan, which is terrific and a great way to use up that vermouth. So if you rewatch this film this summer, Some Like It Hot, which is fantastic, make yourself a Manhattan marinated steak along with the Manhattan. And Andre always likes to say Marilyn Monroe's favorite pairing of the Manhattan was saltines and peanut butter. So sometimes when we do this presentation, we also serve saltines and peanut butter. It's a great combination because Manhattan is rich, sweet and savory, and then you eat it with salt, nuts.
So the story here, just a little factoid behind the scenes, the Manhattan really was one of Marilyn's, if not her favorite cocktail. And she was drinking them anyway on set, and they were having a really hard time keeping her focused. So the director just decided to incorporate it into the movie. True story, Marilyn.
Only way to travel.
You better put on the lights. I can't see what I'm doing.
No lights. We don't want them to know we're having a party.
But I might spill something.
So spill it. Spills, thrills, laughs, and games. This may even turn out to be a surprise party.
What's a surprise?
Uh-oh. Not yet.
When?
Better have a drink first.
That'll put hair on your chest.
No fair guessing.
Is this a private clam bake, or can anybody
join?
Yes,
it's private. Please, go away.
Dolores, do you still have that bottle of vermouth?
Sure.
Who needs vermouth?
We've got bourbon. We can make Manhattans.
Okay, Manhattans at this time of night?
Bring the cocktail shaker.
Oh, sugar. You're going to spoil my surprise.
Cheers to Jack Lemmon.
So tonight, we just want to do a recap because it is a cocktail PowerPoint. That we talked about the origin. Hopefully, everyone learned the origin of the cocktail, which moved from communal drinks that the upper class drank to bespoke drinks that an individual could walk into and have at the bar, and that's a result of the American Revolution. And that the cocktail, kind of like jazz, was an improvisation that the United States gave to the world, and coincided with Hollywood cinema. The current craft cocktail movement is a rebirth from the 19th century, and that the character is a link between cocktails and cinema. We didn't talk about it too much, but we saw that each one of these characters that we saw tonight had a signature drink, and a drink that was associated with them. And it was amazing to us when we wrote this TCM book to see how a director would use a cocktail either for a moment to bring romance or because they couldn't figure out what the story was going to do, so they just got both characters drunk and then they figured it out. Or there was a number of different uses for the cocktails in cinema.
Next slide, please.
So to talk about one of the great characters
We have to end with a bang.
and cocktail pairings ever.
The Big Lebowski, 1998.
Go ahead and
You
cue
all know
the
what this
slide.
drink is going to be.
What do you do? Oh, nothing much.
Hello, Jeffrey.
Yeah, how are you? Listen, Maude, I got to tender my resignation or whatever because looks like your mother really was kidnapped after all.
She most certainly was not.
Hey, man, why don't you fucking listen occasionally? You might learn something.
We want to leave you with a couple of questions because, of course, Andre and I cannot watch a movie these days without looking for the cocktail, and there is almost always one, it seems like. And so, three things. When does the cocktail appear in the movie, and why? How do they reflect character, the setting? So you just saw the Big Lebowski character, of course. Think of that first clip, Casablanca, French 75, coming out of Morocco. And then who or what is transformed by the cocktail? Again, this allows you to drink and watch movies, but in an intellectual sense. All right, we're ready for our last slide.
We'd just like to thank you for having us, and if there's any questions.
We also want to thank our bartenders here at the Vista
Abbott.
Public House. Please give them a round of applause. Also, Tom Monahan and everybody in Alumni Relations. To all of you who came out, not because of cocktails, but because you were curious, we thank you. Come back and see us on Hawk Hill. I do occasionally have a little cheese or a little whiskey at my desk. Come knock on my door, Marion Hall, 113. We're happy to take a couple questions. We have books for you in the back. We have copies of movie night menus, and we have copies of Booze and Vinyl. You can find us on Instagram with the Darlingtons. If you want to follow us further, we don't know if there will be another cocktail book after this trilogy, but you never know.
I would like to say that there is a website, boozeandvinyl.com as well, which has our tour dates. We're still on tour, technically. We're going off to Portland and Seattle after this. So if there is more alumni in any of those cities, please share that through social media. We'd love to see them at the events.
Questions? Oh, we've got questions. All right. Madame. We've got a microphone coming around. I'm looking at Christine.
Very official.
Christine, what year were you at St. Joe's?
2012.
2012?
Yeah.
Hey.
I have a question. So I have the apartment that sort of tends to entertain a lot, whether it's planned or unplanned. So in your opinion, what would be the top items to want to always have either in your fridge or on your bar cart that will capitalize on a variety of tastes?
I think we should give Christine a copy of our first book, The New Cocktail Hour. We're going to do a giveaway. Because Christine, we begin this book with a 3-bottle bar. And we show you how to buy 3 bottles to make a Negroni, French 75, and everything else. Enjoy it.
So our theory on that is that there are people that drink light spirits, so always have gin or vodka on hand. Then always have whiskey, because you can make it brown drinks. And then add a bitter spirit, like either Aperol or Campari. And between those three, you can really solve about 25 cocktails right there that'll make everybody happy. The fourth one probably to add after that would be tequila. But yeah, we start with those three bottles, and it's as simple as that. As long as you have, I mean, it's good to always maybe have some lemons and limes hanging around. Have those, martini glasses chilled if you want. Maybe some bubbles, but it's really as simple as that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did for this book, and we did not work with any sponsors, but we tried loads of different gins, whiskeys, vermouths, and we do put our preferred brands in the recipes so that when you want to make the drink, you can get those bottles and make a perfect drink the first time. So there's no second guessing. It's my little gift to you.
We wanted widely available liquors and spirits, and there's so much on the market now that we thought it was important to choose that for people, and that way we would know that the recipes worked as well. So there's a lot of cocktail books, and you get them, and you try to make the drink, and you're like, this is not working at all. And it's because you're using like Tanqueray, which is a huge gin, versus a Plymouth, which is a very light gin. So we put those in the book as well. And we really attempted to have the best products for the money. So there's not a lot of expensive, esoteric stuff in there. It's a lot of stuff that is, that you're probably reaching for already.
Question. All right, second question.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm class of 2011.
Hey, Maggie. Thanks for coming out.
Yes, absolutely. I have a two-part question for you. One is, what is each of your go-to drinks at a bar? And the second, what would you put into the Hawk, which I'm branding as a new drink?
Oh my gosh, I'm seeing like Eagle Rare or something.
I just thought of Eagle Rare too.
Eagle Rare is a beautiful bird.
Eagle Rare is made by Buffalo Trace, which was it was one of the few distilleries that was not closed by Prohibition. They got a medical license to continue selling whiskey through Prohibition, so that you could get sick for 2 weeks, get a prescription, and then magically, obviously, your husband or wife would also get sick 2 weeks afterwards. And you could kind of keep getting sick throughout the year and get a prescription for Buffalo Trace, which is how they survived. And they make a product called Eagle Rare, which is unbelievable.
And it has an eagle, which looks very
I know, which is
hawk-like
not a
on the
hawk, but yeah,
bottle.
when you look at the bottle, that screams at me.
My next thought would be to use a Philadelphia-based spirit like Blue Coat Gin. We've got a lot of great distilleries. You should all come back to Philadelphia and do a distillery tour. Of
Or
Manhattan.
Manatani, which just won the
Spilled
gold
Spirits.
medal. Their Manatani whiskey, which is an amazing whiskey anyway, just won the gold medal for the American Craft Spirits Association, which is a huge deal for Pennsylvania spirits. And it really is a wonderful product. What was the first part of that question? That was, our go-to drinks. Oh, that's really hard. Mine changes kind of seasonally. If I'm trying to test a bar, I go with a daiquiri because it's really a great drink to tell whether they can balance the acid and the citrus in the drink. But my go-to might be something like an old-fashioned. I do like an old-fashioned.
My go-to drink, at least at the moment, is about to become the drink on the back of movie night menus, which is the Clover Club. It's a raspberry and egg white drink. I love cocktails with egg whites. And, cool fact, the reason you should serve it at your next reunion is it's a cocktail from Philadelphia. It was born in Philadelphia out of an early social club called the Clover Club. You can get great examples of it at a place called Old Bar in Old City, which is in the old Bookbinders.
Yeah, the two famous Philadelphia cocktails are probably the Clover Club and then the Philadelphia Fish House Punch, which if you've been in Philadelphia, you know that drink as well.
Absolutely. Great question. Thanks for asking.
We have a question from online. JD from Swarthmore asks, do you shake or stir a White Russian? Technically, it has cream, but I've always stirred them. Is that incorrect?
You should stir that drink with your finger. Is the right answer on that. Or those little cardboard toothpick things that you get at the coffee shop. That's probably the answer on that. I think they could be shaken, but I've never really seen anybody do it. It's built in the glass. It's almost like when you really order it at a nice cocktail bar, they'll do it as like a cream float, and then you sort of left up to you to shake it, or to stir it on your own. It's a great question. That's a great question. If you're using creamer, you probably shake it.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Here comes the mic.
Thank you. You mentioned you like egg white beverages. So
I sure do.
A bar that I've been to before, they use chickpea water instead of egg white.
Aquafaba.
Yes.
The vegan alternative to the egg white. Yeah.
Yeah.
How is the drink?
Really good. It's really frothy. I do like the whiskey sour there. And I was wondering if I've never knowingly had an egg white drink. Have you had both and compare?
I've had an
Yeah,
aquafaba cocktail.
aquafaba is amazing, and it's chickpea water. So basically, you could take canned chickpeas, dried chickpeas, and the water from it you can take and shake it like it's egg white, and it will froth in a very similar way. In fact, it's different than egg white, but just as magical. Aquafaba drinks are incredible. If any of you have ever tried them, I think the egg white gives it more of a milkshakey, that classic milkshakey mouthfeel just that velvetiness that you can't replace. But aquafaba sure is cool, and I have nothing against it. I make those drinks myself, and they're really fun. And they're perfect for bars if you have vegans or just people that are freaked out about egg whites, which is a lot of people. But the thing I will say about egg white is that any good bartender who's using egg white will just ask you, did you wash the eggs that you used for your omelet this morning? Probably not, right? Do you wash your eggs at home? No. But the bar does. The bar should. But also, the alcohol in it really kills it, and I've never heard of anybody getting sick from an egg white drink. So they're not to be feared.
If you want to try an egg white cocktail, a New York sour with an egg white is one of my favorite egg white drinks.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Elisa.
Lisa?
Graduated in 08. I'm sorry that I missed you as a professor.
I know.
Very
Let's
disappointed
reconnect.
now. Can you go through some of the staples of what we should have in a bar, such as a jigger? I have one. I don't know what it does.
Okay. Lisa, this is a jigger. Everyone, this is a jigger. Be sure to ask for one. If you are moving apartments, for example, ask your parents or your friends to give you a cocktail setup. Or do this for your friends for an engagement party. Host a bar party. Everyone bring either a different cocktail tool. Well, it's just in this essence, it is cool. Right? and bring a different bottle.
And as we saw from Nick and Nora, having a cocktail set up at home is the path to marital bliss.
Exactly. So a jigger simply allows you to conveniently measure out both your spirits and fresh juices. So you have usually a fourth of a shot on one side and then a shot on the other. And there are markings here for like half a shot and 3/4 of a shot. So a shot is an ounce.
The jigger really is a good way to, if you have a drink that you love, one of the best ways to get into cocktails is find a drink that you love from a bartender that you love and ask them to build for it and then go home and make it. And the jigger is the path towards making a drink that you've had out at a bar that you love, but also finding a drink that you may like. You may think you like a martini a certain way, but if you start playing around with the ratios, you may discover that you can improve upon it and make it even better. So the jigger you can always use, or you can just use it as a ladder to finding that great drink, and then you don't have to use it later once you kind of know what you want, what you're doing.
I'm going to quickly show you some other tools, like the shaker we really like. I'll put my mic down, and then Andre can talk about why we use the 2-part shaker.
Yeah, so we use a Boston shaker, named after this great city. The only reason it looks strange is because what is normally a pint glass is metal on this one. The reason for that and why that became prevalent is because these are normally glass, but if the bartender forgets to face that backwards, or even if they don't, if it slips out of their hands, it's flying glass towards the back bar or at a customer. So a number of years ago, bartenders switched over to a metal shaker, and you can get them on Amazon, you can get them everywhere. I really do recommend them. They tend to slip out of your hands less often, and they're much easier to just throw in the dishwasher after a party, too.
Also, most people are gifted the cobbler shaker, which is a 3-part shaker. If you've made many drinks in them, you know that they often stick. And so if you have people over and you're making a lot of drinks, you're like trying to tear the 3 parts apart. With 2 parts, it's a lot easier. I'll quickly just demo how to take these apart. If you want afterwards, we're also happy to give you a little demo. We've done cocktail workshops for where we show them how to literally shake their way through 3 drinks. Once you've done 3 drinks, you can pretty much make anything.
So the cobbler shaker is the shaker that's at most department stores, stuff like that. It's the 3-part that has the little thing that comes on top, off top. They're really impossible, and they're really only good for martinis. So the Boston or Boston shaker is really the way to go. Yep. Once she's made the drink, she puts the strainer on top. This is fun. I feel like I'm in an airplane. They should do this on airplanes. If they did cocktail classes on airplanes, everybody would be a lot happier. Please drink the martini first and then help your neighbor. Finally, and then we have the stirrers. We're going to stir. We do have, you'll notice we do have, this is a little bit fussy, but there are 2 different types of strainers. This is a julep strainer. It was created originally for doing anything that was on ice, like a julep. And it basically fits into the cocktail glass better, which is why that. And then there was the other classic strainer. You can really get one, it works for both.
Again, you can use a mason jar, you can use other things, but if you want to be able to practice some of these techniques and look like you know what you're doing.
Which is really all that matters.
Yes.
Yes.
One last question.
Well, not to spoil any fun, but I was wondering if you ever do anything with mocktails or healthy drinks. At home, I like to combine orange-flavored vodka with kombucha.
Ooh, kombucha drinks are great. In fact, we did it. We just did it last summer. We did a kombucha class. Yes, mocktails, low-proof cocktails. What else are they called? Drink like it's 1933. Drinks are fantastic. One of the great things that I've seen recently is that mocktails have trended on bar menus. They're great for bars because you're already making all the syrups and juices and everything. And it's wonderful to go into a bar, and if you're not drinking, to not feel like you're ostracized in some way, and you're not getting this fun drink just because it doesn't have alcohol. So it's been amazing to see mocktails show up. Sometimes they're called shims or no proof or low proofs. It's great to see them show up on menus. They're great for the kitchen and the bar because they're still using those fresh ingredients. So there should be no stigma about it, and it's great that they have mainstreamed as much as they have. Even just in the last couple of years, they've really started to take hold. But it's great for people that aren't drinking, or for people that are pregnant.
Absolutely. In fact, our first book does have a section of mocktails in it in the back. And I will tell you, when we tested out this book, we hosted a party for a group of AA members, thanks to one of our friends at St. Joe's. And we did a glorious party where we shook and stirred mocktails using all kinds of interesting ingredients. And people absolutely loved it. One of our favorite mocktails in the first book is called the Burning Branch, which does taste like scotch, but in fact you use Lapsang Souchong tea syrup, which is a smoked tea, a little bit of plain apple cider, some lemon juice, and a lit branch of rosemary, so you get to also light it on fire.
Yeah, and actually one of the most popular cocktails consumed in the United States is a drink that's called the Little Pink Pearl, which people serve at weddings, and it's basically kind of a pink tiki orgeat drink, and it is at all sorts of weddings, and it's super popular, and we have that recipe in that first book as well, and it's a delicious drink, and you'd really never know that there wasn't alcohol in it, other than you don't start fights like Marlon Brando.
Thank you again, alumni. It has been a pleasure to literally serve you. Please stay, hang out. We're happy to not just autograph your books, but also dedicate them to you. Thank you again, President Reed. It's been a wonderful night.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Sanford. I'm the outgoing president of the Alumni Association. I want to thank everyone for being here. I have 2 quick observations. First, there is, for that question about a hawk drink, there is a Grey Hawk gin. As somebody who collects gins, like I have no other hobbies, there is a Grey Hawk gin, which I would highly recommend. And secondly, I would like to note that if Professor Darlington were at St. Joe's in the 90s, I would not have graduated. So, just a quick observation there. So, thank you to both of you so much. Please. This is the last in our SJULive series. Needless to say, this was my favorite one. I've been to all but one of them so far. Please continue to look for these SJULive events this summer and next semester. Tune in from wherever you are. This is an exciting new development in the life of the Alumni Relations Program. As Brian mentioned earlier, And I'd like to thank Brian for taking leadership of the Boston chapter, so thank you to Brian. St. Joe's is really entering a new and exciting chapter in its alumni relations. So I'd like to take this opportunity to encourage you strongly to find a way to get involved, either here in Boston or wherever you might be. I guarantee you from personal experience that you will get so much more out of your service to the university in ways you may never have expected, minus the fact that you paid tuition. So with that, I would like to thank you again for being here. I'd like to thank Dr. Reed. I'd like to thank the alumni relations staff, and I wish you all great luck moving forward, and the Hawk will never die. Good night and God bless.